Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this special orientation program that's being organized by Oxford University Press, India. If you have used or have been using New Learning to Communicate for the middle school, you belong to a privileged community of English teachers in India and in several countries that have an Indian diaspora. I'll refer to the course as NLTC, an abbreviation that has been fondly used by teachers for over 25 years. My presentation will basically be in two parts. In the first part, I intend to provide a rather detailed ideological and methodological background to NLTC, including its affinity to NEP 2020, its communicative base, and its planned learning outcomes. In the second part, I'll highlight the key features of the course book, the workbook, the literary reader, and the teacher's resource book or pack. Let me begin. When late Professor Shunil Kumari Ram and I developed NLTC for the middle school and launched it in the early 1990s, we were pleasantly surprised by the warm reception it had. The reason was evident. NLTC was a pioneering indigenous English course, a course prepared by two specialist Indian materials developers for Indian learners of English and for the children of Indian expatriates living abroad. It's built firmly on a multi-skill foundation, foregrounds an innovative approach to the teaching of essential communication skills, and supports a seamless integration of the four language skills. It has been inspired by the Constitution of India and the National Education Policy. NLTC clearly highlights the 5 major recommendations for teaching specified in the National Education Policy 2020. Namely, I've called them central tenets, 5 tenets. 1. Classroom instruction should put learners first, recognizing and building on their knowledge and responding appropriately to their needs. So I called it learner-centeredness and learning-centeredness. 2. Learners need to be urged to express their own ideas, opinions, and feelings rather than be pressurized into voicing their teachers' views all the time. And I've used the terms creativity and curiosity. 3. Holistic development of children is possible only when schools build avenues for the interplay of the mind, the heart, and the body. And I've chosen to refer to it as intellectual and emotional development. 4. Learners should be trained to take responsibility for their own learning rather than depending heavily on their teachers. Which is why I have used the terms self-dependence and autonomy. And 5, our national identity should be firmly rooted in Indianness while also welcoming global citizenship. So I'm referring to local and global identity. Let's now study the title of the course, New Learning to Communicate. The key word is communicate. As you must have guessed, the word communicate represents the core meaning of communicative language teaching, or CLT. What are the fundamental principles of CLT? 1. CLT believes in identifying as clearly as possible the needs of learners and using the findings to design teaching materials like NLTC. The guiding principle of CLT, therefore, is learner-centeredness. 2. The emphasis in CLT is on the content of the language task or activity rather than on overt language learning. In other words, CLT concentrates on what is said or written rather than on how it is said or written. For example, if a person, despite using halting and faulty English, manages to give you the right directions to the bus station, communication has been successful. 3. CLT focuses on the meaning or communicative function of what is said or written than on its grammatical form. That is, it is concerned with the purpose for which a grammatical form or structure is used. For example, the imperative sentence, do it now, can be a command, an instruction, an appeal, a piece of advice, or a warning, depending on who is saying it to who, when, and where. In other words, several communicative functions can be realized through one grammatical form. On the other hand, several grammatical forms can be used to perform one communicative function. For example, the different grammatical forms, I'm not quite sure I agree. I don't think it's right. You could be right, but I think. And nonsense are all ways of showing disagreement. 4. CLT does not encourage learners merely to produce grammatically correct sentences. It urges them to use the language they know appropriately in order to achieve a communicative purpose. That is, communication happens only when language, whether it is completely accurate or only partially accurate, is contextually appropriate. A member of parliament is likely to say in a debate, "Mr. Speaker, I disagree with my honourable colleague's view," and not, "Mr. Speaker, what my colleague said was utter nonsense." 5. A communicative classroom has a supportive environment. That is, an environment that promotes guilt-free learner participation in all classroom activities. This means that the English teacher's role should be that of a sympathetic physician rather than that of a stern judge. And 6, errors are tolerated as a natural part of the process of language acquisition. Let me repeat this very important element of CLT. Errors are tolerated as a natural part of the process of language acquisition. Now, this is a cardinal principle of CLT. It follows that a communicatively oriented teacher would promote fluency and not just grammatical accuracy. Such a teacher realizes that her learners may occasionally use their first language or the regional language to maintain the flow of communication in group work or pair work. She also accepts the fact that her learners cannot help but make grammatical mistakes when engaged in a fluency activity like a group discussion or role play. She'll therefore resist the temptation to correct their grammar or pronunciation when they are in the thick of a conversation, because she knows that interrupting learners to correct their grammar or pronunciation when they are trying hard to communicate will only make them unwilling to try to communicate. We need to remember what the great Otto Jespersen said in 1904. Whoever wants to speak well must first murder the language. Whoever wants to speak well must first murder the language. NLTC believes in an overt declaration of its learning targets for classes 6, 7, and 8. And broadly speaking, the major learning outcomes it envisages are: 1. Learners acquire important communication skills that will equip them to use English in the real world for performing communicative functions like asking for and supplying relevant information and agreeing and disagreeing. 2. Learners display evidence of having acquired crucial sub-skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing while applying them in classroom transactions and real-life situations. They will exhibit proof of having assimilated the rudiments of higher-order thinking skills, or what we commonly refer to as HOTS. 3. Learners furnish evidence of the ability to handle the more advanced areas of grammar, like reported speech, non-finites, and passive constructions, in both receptive and productive tasks. 4. Learners provide proof of having acquired the more advanced aspects of vocabulary, like collocation and connotation, in both receptive and productive tasks. 5. Learners exhibit evidence of responding to the creative use of language and content in different literary genres. They deploy critical thinking skills in tasks that require the interpretation of literary texts. And 6, learners show proof of having acquired basic academic skills, or what teachers commonly refer to as study skills, like the efficient use of the dictionary and the ability to condense or elaborate relevant information. Let's now take a look at each of the 4 print components of the NLTC Middle School package. And let's begin with the chief component, the course book. What are the unique features of the course book? 1. The diverse texts that comprise the content A. reflect a strong Indian flavor and the richness of its cultural traditions alongside its current notable achievements. B. The texts promote universal values like respect for multicultural traditions and awareness of environmental issues. And C. Endorse positive attitudes to life like courage in the face of adversity, genuine concern for the underdog, and dignity of work. The second feature of the course book, the course book avoids the conventional trend of rigidly compartmentalizing knowledge and pigeonholing school subjects. Instead, it forges cross-curricular links between language and traditionally disparate subjects like geography, environmental studies, sports, travel, and films. 3. The course book has 2 key dedicated sections. A. Life skills, which prepare the learner to deal effectively with real-life situations and challenges, like a sudden fire in the house or bullying and ragging in school. And B. Projects, which promote a multi-disciplinary approach to the development of collaborative pieces of work, like planning a study trip and preparing a time capsule. 4. The course book contains an elaborate glossary of literary devices to help the teacher when she has to explain a word, phrase, or sentence in a text that is literary in nature or literature-based. And 5. The course book has an extremely useful skill assessment plan that the teacher can use to measure learning outcomes in oral reading, silent reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Let's turn our attention to the workbook. What are the notable aspects of the workbook? 1. It's an integral component of the NLTC package. It dovetails with the course book and offers an explicit unit-wise link with the course book. 2. It revises and consolidates the essential grammatical items introduced in the course book. It contains detailed explanatory notes on the grammatical items, as well as an interesting set of contextualized exercises. 3. It uses keywords, phrases, and idiomatic expressions for the purpose of vocabulary expansion and enrichment. Lexical categories like synonymy and antonymy, derivatives, compound words, homophones, and collocation are the content of a wide variety of lexical tasks. 4. It provides extensive practice in writing, aided by scaffolding and formats for writing. Learners are enabled to produce a range of functional and imaginative pieces of writing and respond appropriately in writing to unfamiliar topics and themes. And 5, importantly, to make NLTC truly user-friendly, the workbook contains assessment tools in the form of 3 sample tests and a comprehensive mock examination. It's time now to focus on the third component of the NLTC package, the literary reader. What are the notable features of the literary reader? 1. It sets out to inculcate in the middle school learner an abiding love for reading books, especially those with a literary flavor. 2. It attempts to develop basic literary appreciation skills, which is a significant curricular objective for teaching English in middle school. 3. It has a menu of important literary genres like narrative texts, poems, short plays, biographies, and autobiographical extracts. 4. It strikes a balance between classical literature, represented by writers like George Eliot, Charles Dickens, and Rabindranath Tagore, and contemporary writing, represented by writers like Ruskin Bond, James Herriot, and Gulzar. 5. It includes a range of thematic elements like wit and humor, mystery and detection, love and romance, and hope and desire. And 6. It uses an array of editorial tasks to sharpen the learner's ability to make inferences, interpret literary references, evaluate plot and character, and offer personalized responses to the content. It's time now to study the fourth and final component of the NLTC package, the Teacher's Resource Book, or TRB, as teachers fondly call it. What are the significant features of the TRB? 1. It's an indispensable component of the course. It's been designed as a reliable and convenient pedagogical aid for the NLTC teacher. 2. Broadly speaking, it has 4 sections, and I'll refer to them as A, B, C, and D. A. guidelines and strategies for teaching the course book, the workbook, and the literary reader. B. Answer key to all the exercises and activities in 3 books. C. Oxford real enrichment worksheets and a key to the items in the 6 worksheets. And D. Listening texts for the listening tasks in the course book and the listening items in the sample examination included in the workbook. And 3. It's important to note that the first section of the teacher resource package has, again I call them A, B, C, D and E. A note on the time that a teacher can devote in an academic year to the teaching of the course book, the workbook, the literary reader, and in the conduct of examinations, sports, and co-curricular activities, what we generally refer to as allocation of time. B. A detailed note on the strategies that the teacher can use to teach the course book, the workbook, and the literature reader. Methodological strategies. C. A skill assessment plan that the teacher can use to gauge whether the learning objectives for the middle school have been achieved. D. Detailed lesson plans for the teaching of the 6 units in the course book, including add-on digital activities from Oxford Educate and Oxford Arrear. And E. Detailed lesson plans for teaching the prose texts, the poems, and the one-act plays in the literary reader, including add-on digital inputs from Oxford Educate and Oxford Arrear. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Here's wishing all of you a fruitful, enjoyable, and enduring partnership with NLTC. Thank you very much.